North Main Street, which is the old Sticky Fingers?
Yes. This is conceptual review of a proposed facade improvement and minor site changes to the former Sticky Fingers restaurant. Staff's comments really are pretty much just describing the project. The site changes are required to accommodate the division of the building into a multi-tenant space, which is 3 spaces. Building department indicated that additional ADA parking spaces for the front of the building will be required, as well as bike parking will be required. Based on the improvements, landscaping will need to be brought closer into alignment with the current ordinance requirements. Staff will work with the applicant to determine the best course of action for additional landscaping, and consider relocating the 2 parking spaces closest to 17A next to the building due to the safety concerns with the parking that close to the entry exit. And staff does not feel that the corner location is being emphasized enough in this renovation. Section 4.2.2 D3 of the UDO does require emphasis of corners of buildings. We understand that this is a renovation of an existing building, and they really weren't doing much work on that corner, but just felt that this would be an opportunity to meet that requirement. And just the building is a mixture of lap siding and synthetic stucco due to the proposed changes. The primary facade, the DRB is required. One thing, the dumpster enclosure will need to meet the full screening requirements and be constructed in materials to match the buildings. There were no details on that. So with that, I will turn it over to the board and applicants. And let me get to the plans. Come on.
All right. While Tim is doing that, the applicant is welcome to announce themselves and make their presentation.
This is David Shook with Shook Associates.
And hey, this is Chad Waldorf. I'm one of the owners of the building.
If you could go to the cover sheet. Okay. Again, my name is David Shook, and Chad, the owner, is on the project as well. The building exterior was renovated about 10 years ago, it's my understanding. There are only 2 elevations were renovated. If you can zoom into that lower left-hand corner where the photographs, yes. I'd like to get the photograph in the upper left there on too, if you could.
Which one? I'm sorry.
There you go. That one. Yeah, that one. Yep. Okay, that's the Berkeley Circle elevation, which was renovated. And then down below that is the Main Street elevation, which was also renovated. To the right is the parking lot elevation, which was not renovated. So one of the issues with this building is it's almost 2 completely different stylistic buildings. And that was what the owner came to us to help resolve. If you could move on to sheet 3.2. The next one. Okay. The site contains 2 buildings. If you could back out a little bit. The existing Sticky Fingers building is on the front corner. As you can see, the corner of that building touches the property line, as does the back corner. At the back of the building is a walk-in cooler, modular walk-in cooler. and a wood stockade fence around the dumpsters. 2017, around that time, a building was added in the rear, and the egress point from the parking lot was changed. Some islands were added and a few other improvements. One of the comments made about the parking spaces adjacent to Highway 17, that apparently was also changed at that time. So we'll look into that with staff. I know that was a safety concern in our TRC meeting as well. If you could go to the next one. The proposed demolition involves taking the walk-in cooler at the back of the building away, taking the fence away. We need to remove all the sidewalks along the front of the building, the parking lot side, and we're going to remove all the islands. We have to put in new foundations for any new structural changes we make to the building because of the age of the building and the type of construction. TRC meeting advised us we do need to add additional parking islands, and we'll work with staff with changes there. If you go to the next slide, please. I'm using old terminology. The new construction and site work consists of the new sidewalks and planters along the front of the building, redoing the islands, adding ADA parking. We need to add additional connections to the Berkeley Circle side to allow for the fire exits from the individual tenants. So there'll be some work over there. There's currently construction by the highway department right there, so we're a little unclear as to what that's going to be like. We'll be replacing the dumpster pad and the dumpster screen, as well as screening the service area, and propose to add some potential outside dining in the area where the former walk-in cooler was. Okay. Next slide. These are the existing elevations of the building, and we added the roof plan to the top. You can see what different kind of challenges we have. There's a sloped roof, there's a flat roof, and there's a mansard roof, all combined on this same building. The top elevation is the parking lot elevation with the kind of steakhouse look that it was originally built with. I think it was a steakhouse in the 60s before it was renovated several different times. On the right-hand side of that top elevation is a mansard roof, which shows again on the elevation down below that on the right. Neither of those elevations were modified to any extent when the building was changed. The middle row elevation to the left is the Meeting Street facade, and the lower one is the Berkeley Circle facade. The improvements that were made were to add stucco along part of that Main Street side and down the entire Berkeley Circle side. So again, our attempt in this was to try to bring the elevations together, make it look like a single building. If you go to the next slide. What we're proposing is to cut off the deep overhangs that exist on the parking lot side and install a new wall flush with the existing building and bring the same look from the Berkeley side and the corner around to the other two sides of the building. We're bringing the banding around. We have, in order to cover up the gable roof of the entrance for the old restaurant, we've extended that parapet up. All of the windows are new storefront glazing and doors. We've added metal roof awnings with stained wood brackets over all the entrances. as I mentioned before, is because of the age of the building and the type of construction, these two facades are wood framed and we can't stack anything on them and still meet current code. So we have to install new foundations and a completely new wall in front of the existing walls to accomplish this. We propose to keep the colors similar with the beige color and green metal roof. And that's pretty much our conceptual idea. Open any questions, comments?
Alrighty, thank you. Tim, can you give a little clarity on the staff comment of engaging the corner?
Yes, so section 4.2.2D3 specifically requires that buildings on corners address that corner. Obviously, it's part of the guidelines, and it is one of those things that you can, as the design review board, waive that specific requirement. I included it when I did my review just to highlight the fact that there is an opportunity to potentially get more of an accent there, with the understanding that they're trying to bring a cohesive design across the entire building. And it's something that if they're not going to change it, I debated whether or not to include the statement. So I'm not adamantly advocating for forcing them to make changes where they weren't intending to do any, but I did want to highlight the fact that they were not meeting that specific requirement.
All right, thank you. I'd like to jump or direct the first opportunity for comments to the architect on the board. Mr. Karpus, would you like to lead, or do you have any initial comments?
Oh,
questions?
you know, I'm just at large. Okay, well, my first comment is I appreciate the desire to kind of pull it all together as a cohesive building. You could, you know, it's definitely been kind of a conglomeration of ideas. So I think that's great. I do like the idea of addressing that corner a little bit more, and maybe just taking what you have on the Main Street elevation and building that out on the other side there, just kind of mirroring that about 45 degrees, you know, on the corner. So it's basically a corner element that is higher. Two other comments really. You know, you're kind of given the windows that you have, but I think I would consider using the built up areas, the higher parapet areas, and maybe have an accent color or something in the stucco, so it's not, I know I just said it was great to tie it all together, but maybe so it wasn't all one color. That's just an idea. But lastly, I think that the green awnings are probably, I know that they're kind of retro for sticky fingers and kind of harken back to that, but I think if you just went black, that would be better for this building. But those are my initial comments.
Alrighty. How about Candy? Do you have any comments?
Hey, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, there was one other thing. I'm not sure. You may want to have a wall or something between the outdoor dining and the dumpster. It's really close. Rather than just have like a planter, it just might be a little bit better for people sitting there. Now, that's not necessarily an architectural comment, but as a future possible patron, I think it would probably be more desirable to have something there that you can like there's more of a screen between the dining and the dumpster. So sorry, I'll be quiet now.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. A great point. Candy, would you like to
Yeah, I agree with that
add
point.
anything?
I also think the green is a bit bright against the rest of the building, and I think it just needs to be subdued down. So I like the idea of black awnings. So, and I like the idea of balancing that corner with a little build-up on the other corner. So.
One thing I would just interject is on the Main Street elevation, there's awnings that are there that do not go over the windows. I mean, I see the, form follows function, and you, go to the middle one, Tim. I could see the use of awnings over a window, but I don't necessarily see why you would have awnings over a blank wall. And I think that would actually keep it from not looking so horizontal. So you might consider removing those.
I agree with that too.
Okay.
Yeah, and even so looking at the plan to see if it, the taller kind of tower element almost, that you could make a case to have awnings over that as well, or something. I think that might need to be restudied. And I'm gonna diverge a little bit, and I think I'm struggling with this building because it's a challenging building, and I think the Berkeley Circle elevation is not necessarily a good precedent to repeat. I think the old steakhouse part of the building is actually more interesting and looks a little bit better, believe it or not, than just the plain stucco. So I'm not a fan of this building. I'm really not. I know it's a challenge, but it looks a little horizontal. It looks a little too stucco to me. If it were a new building, which obviously it's not, I don't think we would allow this much stucco. I think we'd be asking for a lot more brick. I think we'd be asking to have the horizontal lines broken up with pilasters or something like that. So, I mean, I think appreciate the challenge you have, but I think I'm not quite sure this is the right solution to repeat something that is not necessarily successful right now. So I'm leaning against it, and it's just conceptual approval, but kind of those are my thoughts. But all right, Hart, did you have anything you'd like to say?
No, I mean, it's an existing site. We're doing the best I can do with what they have.
Okay. Bill?
Oh, Bill did have to recuse himself on this one, so I believe he's muted himself.
Okay. And then
I really
just to make
agree
sure,
with
did
you,
Mike?
Chris. I really
Okay, go ahead, Candy.
that long extension of the green awning on the front Main Street elevation. Something's got to happen with that. Either you've got to get windows under all of that, or you've got to space it apart or something. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did Michael, was he able to join us? Okay. Any further discussion? You want to just kind of wait just for a minute and ruminate? Any other thoughts?
Hey, this is Carpus. I agree with your comments on the Berkeley Circle elevation, that there probably are some opportunities there to dress it up. And I'm not necessarily saying you go back and add pilasters, but I think by mirroring that corner element on that side and maybe making it a different material or a different color or something would help. And I think those are just louvers, right? Those aren't windows, right?
These are just, yeah, they're fake louvers.
Okay.
Well, and maybe part of the solution is not having the same color throughout. Maybe it needs to be, maybe the elevation that, well, maybe the kind of the tower element on the Main Street side, maybe that's a different color. I mean, I'd love it to be brick, but I understand the constraints there, but maybe it's just finishing and color issues would help it along.
Yeah, I think so. Both taller parapet areas, I think if they matched up a little bit, that would be better. Yeah, adding brick means going in and tying into the existing foundation or adding foundation and just be, it'd be a challenge, I think. But definitely doing something a little different with the higher towers. You don't necessarily want to do that change in color kind of thing horizontally, or it's going to accentuate the horizontal nature of the whole thing, which is kind of what you're saying about that canopy on the Main Street elevation. It's so long and continuous. It's sort of like a Applebee's kind of thing. That was not supposed to sound derogatory, but I see what you're saying about that. So I think just breaking it up, the challenge with an existing building that isn't super three-dimensional is making it three-dimensional, you know, and it's just a flat thing right now that, except for that one high wall there. So I do appreciate the addition of the entry on the parking lot side, kind of connecting that with what they're doing on the corner. But I think mirroring that and then tying those two elements together somehow visually with different material, or you know, a different color. I hesitate to say a different color because it's just like different color stucco is oftentimes not the best solution, but maybe looking at some different material that can be applied on there. Just some thoughts.
Is this, and I've never professed to be an architect, but is this an application where you would use the thin brick or whatever, where you get the brick look without all the structural issues?
That's a little bit more doable. You'd have to go back in and get it down to the sheathing and probably add, and Mr. Sugar have to, you know, chime in on that, but you'd probably need to add like Den's glass or something that you can, because that thin brick is basically like tiled on. So it's doable, but you know, I don't know what kind of budget buster that would be, but I mean, these days brick and stucco cost about the same, but that I think Bill could address that, but I just don't know about having to add footings and stuff. So they could explore thin brick if you know, if they're wanting to do that, but maybe some sills at the horizontal windows. If they're going to have stucco, they can probably add some ephes type sills that kind of accentuate those windows a little bit, because they're just punched holes right now. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
They probably want me to stop talking. So anyway, those are some observations, just to kind of give it a little bit more three-dimensional textural kind of feel to it, rather than just a solid stucco approach.
Okay.
All right, any other comments, or Mr. Shook, you have anything you would like to say at this time? I mean, it's just conceptual, so really just giving you comments.
No, I think your comments are very good. I mean, we did struggle with how to pull these two elevations together and do it in a reasonable manner. But I think all the comments are good. I agree with the horizontal nature of Berkeley Circle. I agree with the awnings on Main Street. We'll look strongly at trying to do something more appropriate on the corner. So, no,
Okay.
I'm with your comments.
Okay. Well, if there are no other comments, we'll move on.
Yeah, if I can just weigh in real quickly as the building owner,
Sure.
I'll just say that the tenant did not pay rent for a long time, and so we have budget constraints, and given the property is right on the property line, makes it difficult, but we'll certainly work with David to address y'all's comments, and thank you for those, and we'll be back in touch, I guess, however the process unfolds next. So thank you.
All right, we appreciate it, and I think all of us understand the challenges, given the times and the proximity on the corner to the road. So we're sympathetic to that. So, well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
that, and we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is South Point Apartments. Tim, if you could get us started.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. All right, to address staff comments, this is a conceptual review of the proposed apartment complex, would consist of 228 units, would be a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. This is currently an undeveloped parcel that actually consists of 2 pieces on either side of South Point Boulevard. The property is currently not within town limits. They have requested annexation, and the requested zoning is MFR, which is multifamily residential. The staff comments consisted of requesting that they coordinate with Dan Ryan on the turn lane right-of-way that is needed along the front of the property. They need to show a 25-foot wetland buffer and the required calculation for the parks and open space on the site plan. Obviously, being conceptual, those things will be coming. A full grand tree survey will be required, along with a 1/4 acre representative sample of all trees 8 inches DBH or greater. Tree protection board approval will be needed. Parking does not exceed the 200% of the minimum requirement, so they're actually in good shape on parking and not adding extra pavement. At this time, a landscape plan and photometric plan have not been submitted and will be required with future submittals. And to address the architecture, the materials of the building include a mix of fiber cement siding, both lap and board and batten. The main roofing material is asphalt shingles, and they are also utilizing standing seam metal roof over some of the entrances on the buildings. This does meet the intent of the UDO for a mix of materials, and color scheme and materials board will be required, and design and details of the proposed amenity center also will be required. This is conceptual mostly for the site layout and preliminary architecture. So as I said, it's the acreage on either side of South Point Boulevard. And this is the proposed layout incorporating some of this, the wetland that does exist here on the property. At this point, I can turn it over to the applicant and allow them to address the board.
Hey Tim, this is Josh with Stantec, the civil engineer representing the project. I also have Mark Mills with PlanWorks. He's the architect for it, and Bill Peebles. He's representing the developer. And thank you for the introduction, Tim. It was pretty much hit on all the points I was going to try to make. So I'll try to keep it short. But basically, the site plan is, as you see in front of you, we have 8 separate apartment buildings with 5 parking garage structures. The total site is 16.2 acres, and we are going for the MFR zoning. Planning Commission meeting is this coming Monday for the annexation. Total units is 222. Total number of parking spots, as was shown right here, and this includes the garage, is 358. We do have one amenity center that, again, is still conceptually designed at this point. This is, as I believe, the final piece to the master plan for the South Point development. These two parcels, or one parcel in two pieces, was intended to be commercial in the master plan, and we think this fits with that concept. The wetland impacts that we are showing here, these wetlands are non-jurisdictional wetlands. I know that Somerville doesn't have purview over wetlands, whether they're non or jurisdictional, but these are non-jurisdictional, so we don't have to go through the Corps of Engineers to get these impacts. We do have to go through DHEC OCRM for their certification, and we've started that process. As far as the traffic goes, we have through the town, we have started the traffic impact analysis for the facility and for the site. To my knowledge, that has been completed and is under review with DOT. One of the conditions, or one of the questions from Tim's recommendations, was to coordinate on the turn lane with Dan Ryan. As of this week, Dan Ryan is continuing to proceed with the turn lane. This turn lane is at 78 in South Point, and that turn lane was required per their development. That is moving forward, and it should be under construction in the start of 2021. With our project and our schedule, we envision that turn lane will probably be complete before we even start breaking ground on this development. That's all I have on the site. Obviously, you can take some questions, but I'll turn it over to Mark, who will talk a little bit more about the building elevations and the design there.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mark Mills, president, architect in Raleigh. Planworks Architecture is the company, and what's coming up on the screen there is a representative sample of our elevations that we're proposing. So we're going to do a 3-story multifamily, wood framed. It's going to have hip roofs, which enough variety of the roof, so it's not a long ridge line. In fact, the ridge line is very minimized. What we're doing is we're having a juxtapositioning of the facades in different areas. So we have the front entrances actually bump out the most, and there's various step backs along the way and accentuated in various forms. We've got balconies with rails to give some more shadow lines. We've got a variety of windows there. So I think there's enough variety with some symmetrical features to pull it all together. In terms of materials, they were read previously, but we're going to do a combination of the brick, and you can see the brick basically is going to be a 1st-story base for what we do, but then accentuations in various areas to the 2nd floor, turning the corner, which will look nice from the angle. You can see that on the side elevation. We've got build outs around the front entry columns out of brick. And then what we're also doing is we're using fiber cement in various ways. We're doing horizontal siding. We're doing board and batten siding in areas. And then we're doing fields of the fiber cement and trimmed out, making a kind of panelized look around some of the columns there to build those out. And so we're going to use some light colors, either whites, off-whites, for a lot of the fiber cement, but the base of the board and batten might be a slightly darker color or complementary color. The brick is probably going to be in the light brown to kind of like a taupe area, light brown gray with some darker gray mix in, so it's not a monochromatic look on that. I'm going to kind of give a nicer contrast to the white fiber cement by doing some black iron railings, aluminum railings. So that's going to be a nice contrast with the dark to the light. We have some metal section roofs, mostly over the entrances. That's probably going to be a silver color to contrast the darker brick that it's around as the entrances. We're doing some different grille styles on the windows, bring in the low country. We're also doing some bracket patterning up underneath some of the overhangs, especially at the front entrance, just to give another detailed trim feel for that. So that about sums it up. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Alrighty. This is this is the entrance to an existing neighborhood. Is this site plan in keeping with the intent of what that neighborhood was planned for?
I don't believe that there were any sort of conceptuals put together for what this property would have been in the master plan, which was done a long time ago, maybe the 90s. Bill might have some history on that.
Yeah, I think it was mid-90s when they first submitted the overall master plan, which was single family in the back, and then this parcel of the 16 acres was always designated for just commercial. And again, back in the mid-90s, that they didn't really know what that was going to be, and they've obviously held it for quite a while. So there is no really, it was just blanket commercials, I guess, the best way to describe it up front. No detailed plans or layouts were performed on that piece at the time.
Alrighty. So you'll be accessing South Point Boulevard, but you will not be accessing Finucane Road, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I think this is going to be challenging because is this the appropriate look and feel going into a neighborhood? This is a site plan related. So would it be better to have the buildings up on the road on South Point Boulevard rather than parking? And if not, it would have to have walls or some extensive buffering or something so that you're not going down South Point Road and all of a sudden you're just seeing a lot of asphalt. So that's, and this is conceptual, so that's just kind of one of my initial comments. And it's also hard to talk about it or think through it because there's no tree survey. So at least I don't believe there is. So it's challenging to say, okay, well, are there good looking trees in here? Are there trees that need to be worked around? So without that tree survey, it's really difficult because right now, what's happening on the left side particularly is that's going to be clear cut for the most part. So I think that's a challenge. So it's hard for me to respond to the site plan except kind of the large massing. And that would apply to, I guess where everything is laid out. I know there's a lot of wetland being filled, particularly on the eastern side with a pond in the wetland, which is pretty unusual. And then what is the appropriate look for Finucane Road? And I don't know if Tim knows this or if it's a different municipality, but that's on the plan. It says that's a 20-foot rock road. Well, some of these are rhetorical questions, really. It's just things to think about. But it's a 20-foot right of way, 20-foot wide right of way, rock road. Should that really be a 50-foot right of way? Does that need to tie into anything in the back or future development? And I think when laying this out and bringing it to us, I think we need to see the context a little bit more, or maybe we just need to study the site a little bit more. I'm looking at the photos. I'm very familiar with this area. So it kind of looks like I'm struggling with its appropriateness, and I don't know if it really quite fits. And it seems like that there's a lot of elements going on, and the site was maximized, and I understand the value of that. But I'm not sure that that's appropriate for this site. So again, those are just my initial comments, and you're welcome to, if you want to have any responses to those, you're more than welcome to interject at any time, or we can just go on to other comments from the board.
Just real quick, this is Bill Peoples again. When you mentioned the trees and things of that nature, the site, I believe a long, long time ago was either farmland or had been, a lot of the trees have been timbered years and years and years ago. So there are not very many trees on the larger parcel as it stands. And then on the left-hand side, most of them are just very small, young pine trees. But we will do a formal tree survey and everything like that. But what you're seeing there now, it's not like a lot of grand oaks or any huge pine trees or things like that in nature. And the overall site, it's just not, it's not a very wooded site to start with. So we're not really clear cutting anything, and I don't think it'd be a drastic change from what's
Okay.
currently there now. And
Okay.
regarding the
Fair enough.
pond and the wetlands, that's from our wetland engineer. That's a very minimal impact, and they would the Corps and the OCRM typically would prefer to see something of a pond being put in there versus a building or a road or something like that. So I don't think that's as big of an impact as it looks on the site, just because of the size of the storm retention pond. And as far as the road on the edge, I believe that's just an old gravel road that I don't believe goes anywhere or connects to anything. It's just kind of the county line buffer between Dorchester and I believe Charleston County is next door to that. On the other side.
Bill, just to piggyback on that one just a little bit, that road does go back to maybe 2 or 3 single-family residentials, which, you know, in some time could be developed, but it does snake between a bunch of developments similar to what we're doing. On one side, single-family residential, on the other side, probably looks like townhomes. It passes through a substation. So it is really, the narrowness of it is consistent all the way back to those single-family residentials.
Okay. Art, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
All right, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I think so. So basically, what's being addressed at Monday's meeting?
It is the planning commission, which is the first step for the annexation into the town.
Okay. But the zoning and everything is okay for this use?
The zoning that we're asking for with the annexation is okay with this use, correct?
Okay. Yeah, I would be curious about the traffic study for sure, but because it's 78's already pretty congested. So, but I'm really addressing the architecture. It seemed like all the drainage and stuff would go to the pond. Tim, could you go down to the elevations? I like the use of different materials and color. I would definitely look forward to seeing the color rendering of this as it moves forward. Little bit difficult to tell what's going on three-dimensionally. I mean, I could tell, but to me, it just kind of looks like what it is. You know what I mean? So nothing really specific on the architecture. I think that it's more. I think the more of the challenge on this is putting something like this in the front of a pretty well-established neighborhood. So, but that's not something that I can really address. So, anyway, that's where I am.
Alrighty. Art Weatherford, do you have anything?
I kind of agree with you, Chris, on the west side of the development with the parking lot fronting the road. I think that maybe it could possibly look a little better if that was kind of flip-flop. But I mean, it looks like they're already planning some stormwater. The pond and the wetlands is kind of innovative. I'm curious to see how that works out. And I mean, they submitted for the traffic study, so I mean, I guess that's it works for me. Would like to see what the TIA recommendation is. But think it's all come out.
Okay. The last one was you'd like to see what the TIA recommendation is, the traffic study recommendation. Bill Boshane, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think I'm on now. I agree with you on the west side. I think it'd be nice if they would move the buildings and swap the parking to where the buildings are. Then on Finucane Road, I think it's a 50-foot right of way. It's just the roadway is only 20 feet of rock. But looking at the dash lines, right of way line, they look like 50 feet. And it's neither here nor there, really. It is what it is. But I'm okay with the whole thing, other than I agree with moving the buildings forward and putting the parking lot in the rear on the west side.
Okay.
Chris,
Ms. Pratt?
let me just say, if you move the buildings forward to the road, they're massive buildings. They're just going to be, I'm very concerned
Could be
about
worse.
that. Maybe there's some way to have the building be set back like that, but screen the parking in some way that you don't see the sea of asphalt or whatever the material is. But if you put those big, massive buildings right up next to the road, you're going to feel like you're going through a tunnel. It's not going to feel good at all.
I agree with that. I think you'd probably be better off putting a buffer in the daylights out of that than to make it like a commercial lot where you'd have the building right up on the sidewalk.
That would be terrible there. So.
It's going to be, this is hard enough for folks that are used to going through there. So I think the more buffers, deeper buffers, the better, instead of asphalt or building.
The buffer,
Yeah,
just to give you guys some reference, the buffer that would go there in that area between the right-of-way line and the edge of asphalt is 33 feet, and to the garage is 28 feet. So that probably does exceed what we need to. And working with our landscape architect, we could probably look to like you guys have been saying, screen the heck out of it.
Yeah, and I think if the buildings went up on the road, it's kind of an urban solution, and I still view this as suburban. So the buffering may be the way to go. I think it needs to be studied. And this does remind me of a neighborhood off of West Ashley Circle. I think it's near Grand Oaks, I believe, where they have a very similar situation, but they buffered the heck out of it, and it's kind of a meandering walk and that sort of thing. So, that's at a minimum. And the comment was made, well, the measurement goes to the back of curb. We can't really think of it in those terms. You can from the overall design aesthetic, but the buffering needs to occur on this property. You can enhance that by putting street trees on South Point Boulevard if that's allowed. And I think this doesn't really show, I know it's conceptual, but how is the pedestrian interconnectivity working? I see a sidewalk to the north of the plan, just north of the pond from that. Must be something in that existing neighborhood, but if there's a sidewalk needs to run through here, or a trail or something of some kind, and need to consider interconnectivity, pedestrian interconnectivity. All right, is any other discussion amongst the board? Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this project?
This is Mark from Free Ranch Winery.
Hey, Mark, how's it going, man?
How's it been going? Been drinking good wine out there? Beautiful South Carolina. Love it out there.
Yes.
You guys have any wineries out there that you guys like to visit too?
Not so much here in Charleston.
Someone needs to mute. Someone needs to mute their phone. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this project? All right. Does the applicant have anything they would like to say? It's just conceptual, so.
Yeah, the feedback's been appreciated. We will, go back and study some of these comments and be sure that when we come back, we have either addressed some of them or certainly we'll have some more detail to share to hopefully move it forward.
Yeah. Okay.
Chris, can I ask? Chris, may I ask
Sure,
something
go ahead,
from
Candy.
the applicant? I drive by there all the time and I really feel stupid that I haven't noticed, but is this an out parcel as you go in that's being left open? There was a little office there. Is that what's happening with that little square as you go in?
No, that parcel that you see that just has nothing on it is going to be retained by the current owners. And I'm not sure what his plans are for that 1 acre parcel. My guess is some type of, I don't know what he's going to do with it. Some type of retail.
But it is kind of an out parcel that will be retained. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And real quick, just to let you guys know on the traffic, the current plan that they're working through with Dan Ryan and DOT, there's going to be a left-hand turn lane installed to turn coming, I guess, east on Highway 78. You'll have a left-hand turn lane to turn into South Point Boulevard. And then on the frontage, all along the frontage where the out parcel is on 78, that'll be a decel lane and a right-hand turn lane into South Point Boulevard as well. So those are that's what they're waiting on approval from South Carolina DOT on right now.
That will be excellent.
That actually shows on the plan, now that you mentioned it, it's proposed right-of-way and future right-of-way. So the building, that lower left-hand building, is going to look like it's right on the road, which I mean,
again, that's right away. That's not actually where the road will be.
Yeah, initial reaction is it looks awfully close. But all right, sound like someone else was trying to chime in. Is there anyone else that wants to speak on this? Okay, hearing none. Appreciate you all coming virtually, and good luck, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much
for your time.
Thank you, and we'll move on to Freddy's Frozen Custard.
Give me 1 second here. All right. The next item on the agenda is, as Chris pointed out, Freddy's Frozen Custard and Steak Burgers. This is being proposed on Ladson Road at Ladson Oakbrook Shopping Center. This is one of the remaining out parcels that has never been developed out there in front of where the Stars and Strikes Bowling Center went in. This is actually a little bit further up on there. They are requesting preliminary approval for a proposed 3,010 square foot restaurant with a drive-through. Staff comments, a sidewalk connection to the existing sidewalk along Ladson Road is required. The required parking, the provided parking exceeds the requirement. They're providing, they indicated that they're providing pervious surfaces, but I didn't see that denoted on the plan. A dumpster detail is required, and it should be constructed in materials to match the building and screened appropriately. No trees are being shown in the landscaped islands, and this does not meet the requirements of section 8.5.3. Cabbage palmetto are not considered canopy trees and cannot be utilized to meet the minimum planting requirements for canopy trees. And a photometric plan and signage plan have not yet been submitted. At this point, I'll turn it over to the board and applicants.
Alrighty, if the applicant would go ahead and tell us your design intent and what you've got planned.
Yeah, this is Mike Lucas with CSS. We're the civil engineers for the project, and I believe we're also listed as the applicant. Also on the call with us, Roger Baker. He is the architect for the project. Chad Billings, he is the developer. with Charleston Commercial. And then we have John and Derek DeVera. They are the franchisees for the Freddy's itself. And basically, like Tim said, it's not parcel located within the Latson Oakbrook Shopping Center. And we're proposing the just over 3,000 square foot Freddy's restaurant. We went through the TRC review and adjusted the site plan accordingly to get, I guess the drive-through in the rear, the parking on the side of the building. We put the dumpster kind of in the back corner, try to tuck it away as much as possible. The only access points to the parcel are interior to the development. And there was a traffic study done that basically just resulted in, the appropriate striping and signage for the access points to the development. In regards to the comments that Tim had mentioned, we are proposing 10 pervious parking spaces. Those will be placed. There's 7 spaces over by the dumpster area. Those will be pervious, and then I think we need 3 additional spaces. There's 4 spaces on the complete opposite end of the site. I guess that's plan east, but the northern direction. We'll probably go ahead and just do all 4 of those instead of 3, just a little bit easier, so that pervious pavement doesn't break up. And again, the drive-through is along the rear, or I guess the order menu station is along the rear of the site, and then the pickup window would be along the I guess the southern side of the building. And in regards to landscaping, I guess the sheet L-1.0 kind of shows what we're proposing. We can add some landscaping, some trees to those 2 interior islands, along with the shrubs that are proposed. And adding a sidewalk connection to Ladson is not a problem either. We can have that shown on the next submittal. We have a photometric plan currently being made, and we will submit that for review. We'll certainly take into account, the tree locations and everything when that's created. In regards to the dumpster, we'll submit the dumpster details. The material will match the building. That is not an issue. And we will substitute the plantings, the cabbage palmetto. We'll substitute those with another species that'll be, I guess, compliant with regulations. And in regards to the building portion, I'll turn that over to Roger Baker, and he can go through that. Well,
Roger, can you hear us?
Now you can hear me. This is Roger Baker. I'm the principal of Winter Architects in Wichita, Kansas. I'm the architect of this building for Chad Billings. They're in Summerville, South Carolina. If you'll take a look at our MB sheet that we submitted, you'll see that we designed the building to Freddy's standard trade dress, which is just Freddy's red brick and with red and white fabric awnings, red light fixtures, kind of a taupe ephes, and black highlights. So,
hey Tim, do you
that's
have
our standard trade dress for Freddy's?
Tim? Do you have that sheet, MB? The color
in other areas of South Carolina, around Columbia.
Thank you.
If you have any questions or comments, please speak up.
Is there anyone that would like to like to speak first? If not, I have a couple of thoughts. When you're seeking preliminary approval, I think you probably work through the site issues, I would think, with work with the staff to kind of get through that. My initial reaction to the architecture is reminds me that the board, one of the goals of the board was to have buildings that look like they belong in Somerville or the Low Country, and you know, have Low Country design sensitivities. And I'm looking at the Freddy's online, and this looks like almost all of the others that I see. So I don't think this architecture, this building, is unique to Somerville. I don't think it really picks up on some of those Somerville details. So it's going to be a challenge for me to accept this building. I've seen some others that, while not in our area, just look better. I'm looking at one on Carmel. I'm not sure where this is. It says Carmel and East 146th Street. That looks a little bit better. And when I say better, what typically we're looking for is a building that is predominantly brick. You know, that has better articulated awnings. I don't think I would support the red and white striped awnings on this. That's not something that you typically see in Somerville. The columns seem oversized and lack detailing. I mean, it's definitely just very prototypical architecture, which I can appreciate that. I know the reasons behind it, but I don't think it really, to me, it does not fit in Somerville. It looks like it could be anywhere in the east of the Mississippi or whatever. And I just fundamentally don't think it's appropriate for Somerville. So just giving you my opinion. Like I said, there was another one that I saw somewhere that had a little bit more brick. The massing was a little bit different. I think it may be more than just like changing the skin. I think the massing maybe need to be restudied. Maybe there needs to be a hip roof or an A-frame roof, whatever it's called, over the center core, maybe shed roofs on the side. I don't know. I'm not an architect, but I think the building just doesn't look right. I don't know if this building has it or not, but I'm seeing neon wrapping the buildings. I wouldn't support that. The one in Carmel does have brackets that support the awning, and those look a lot better. I think one of the successful ones we've had recently was, maybe it's the Bojangles on Main Street. That building turned out pretty well. There's some other buildings around town, but yeah, that's my initial thoughts. I don't want to overspeak. Let me just kind of go down the list. Candy, is there anything you would like to comment or add?
I would agree with you, Chris. And I'm not sure that it has to be total brick. It just needs to have a bit more of a low country look. I know we're in Oak Brook, but we still are in Somerville, and it needs to have a softer look to it. This is very large looking. It needs to be comfortable. It needs to be Southern in style. Definitely not the two color awnings. It needs to be more like a porch that's a covered porch, and definitely not the large brick columns on. I would try some other type of porch supports.
Maybe
the porch, but not on the side. You know, it's there are other materials that would look better and suit better in the area. So
maybe the term is it needs to look a little bit more sophisticated, perhaps. I mean, it's not an architectural term, but all right.
it just looks like
Anything
your
else, Candy?
prototype building. It looks like a prototype building, and that just isn't going to work. So, okay.
Yeah. Bill, have you got anything you'd like to say?
He's still
Bill, I think
muted.
you're on mute.
Yeah, here I am. Oh, I'm on mute. Am I on? Am I off? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
We got you.
Well, right now it looks kind of like a drugstore. And it shouldn't look like a drugstore. I think you can work, slim the columns down, put a little more pitch on the canopies. Maybe we'll go with metal canopies versus the canvas. Or maybe at least metal on the front and a different, uniform color on the side. Instead of stucco, other than the sign band, go with some other type of material. Doesn't necessarily have to be brick, but it's looks too prototypical.
Okay. All right. Chris Carpus.
I think you guys, y'all three of you made some really good architectural comments, and I mean, it looks like the Freddy's from my hometown up in Illinois, and I'll just leave that. But love the store. I think this is probably not completely appropriate for the Low Country either. And I agree with your general comments, and I also agree with Bill's very specific comments too. Different material. Typically, we don't jump all over stucco unless there's a serious precedent for it. Like if you're watching earlier with the old sticky fingers, it's already stucco, and so or if it's just used very like an accent. But this is just a big stucco thing, and so I would say just look more into the styles in the Low Country, and look at this as if it were in Charleston or Mount Pleasant and Somerville.
Yep. Thank you. Hart Weatherford, anything?
Yeah, Chris, I would just say I agree with the staff comments as far as the site goes. And then as far as the looks of it, I mean, you guys, I agree with everything you've said. It just looks like a kind of boxy, prototypical stucco building. So.
Okay. All right. Before we close, well, I guess that will. Does the board have anything else they would like to add before I kind of close our discussion portion? Okay, so I think the proper order is to make a motion, and then we can discuss it further. Would anyone like to make a motion for, approval or disapproval?
What approval were they looking for, Chris? Sorry.
They're asking for preliminary approval. So we would have to either give them to say no, or we'd have to give them preliminary approval, probably with conditions, or we would, I guess, technically, the no would be we would just deny their request for preliminary approval.
I would make a motion for denial of request.
Okay. All right. That was
I'll
Bill.
second that.
Who would like to make a second, if anyone would like to make a second?
Second.
Candy seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right, I'm going to do a roll call vote.
Hey, Chris, can I say one thing real quick?
Sure.
I mean, I think everybody is kind of against the architectural aspect of it. As far as the site goes, I don't really see any issues with the way the site's laid out and the comments that staff's made. So I don't know if that changes the overall denial on the preliminary approval.
Or is the applicant allowed to, is the applicant allowed to speak during this time, or?
Absolutely.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
I guess, being our first time submitting the architectural portion, we had a chance to kind of go through and get some of the site comments addressed. From an architectural standpoint, I don't know, I don't think there are any issues with what you guys have said. Certainly understand wanting to soften it up a little bit and kind of get that southern feel. I mean, is it, if you guys are okay with the site, okay with this being on the site, I think if doing an approval with conditions, that the building architecture has to be revised to kind of meet some of the design elements that you guys had previously stated. I think, is that a possibility?
Chris, just to address
Go
that,
ahead.
you guys have done final approval for a site and with the condition that they bring back architecture, or, that typically at preliminary, we're kind of looking at moving the whole thing forward or asking them to come back again to preliminary approval again. So I don't know if separating the architecture and the site does any good in this particular instance.
It doesn't.
We're moving it forward. So while the site might be acceptable, it really isn't going to provide anything. You're still going to have to come back for final anyways. I guess I'm just
from a application standpoint to the town, giving a conditional approval or whatever, I do not foresee you gaining any time or losing any time. So, because you still have another step to go. So I would not support a conditional approval, particularly because I think the building has so far to go. And there's some site issues.
We're okay with the site, basically. Basically, we're okay with the site. It's not, those are, staff's comments are fine on that.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any major, you need to move the building forward or whatever like that. It's going to be, you need to address the comments, you need to get the trees and the islands and stuff like that. So, all right, any other questions? All right, we need to call for the vote on the motion to deny preliminary approval. I'm going to just do the roll call again. Candy? So if you're in favor of the denial, you'll say yes.
I am in favor of the
Okay.
denial.
Okay. Bill?
Yes.
Mr. Karpus?
Yes.
Mr. Hart-Weatherford? What was that?
I am not in favor of the denial.
So you're okay. So you do not support the motion then. Okay. And then I am in favor of the denial. So that is the vote, and it's 4-1, I think. Yeah, 4-1. All right, and thank you to the applicants. And if you have any further questions, I'm sure staff will be able to help you. And we appreciate you coming. Next up is 105 Midland Parkway. Tim, if you could get us started.
Yeah, just give me a moment. All right, and
probably gonna have to loop in the client here as well, because I'm sure they're like, what the hell? I hate when they do these loop ins where it's they're not addressing the initial conversation. Hello?
Mike,
the board is still here.
I mean, what needs to be answered is, are we okay moving forward with a fast food restaurant here? You know what I mean? And it's the building can be changed. I mean,
all right.
Right.
Give me a second here. I apologize. Right. So the next item on
let me loop them in. I don't know this other building, but that Culver's has no attractive features to it other than it's not stucco and it's siding. I mean, that's easy enough to change. But I mean, going to a gabled roof, which the building behind it is, I don't know if Freddy's can do that, and I don't know about the color.
This is a closed car wash located on Midland Parkway, just off of Trolley, Trolley Road.
That's a
The applicant
Roger
is requesting
question.
conceptual review for a 6,300 square foot freestanding optometry office.
I'm gonna circle the client in real quick so that they're not out in the field.
And staff comments include a pedestrian connection from the interior of the site to the existing sidewalk along Midland Parkway. Staff has requested.
Don't be alarmed.
With the
Don't be
public
alarmed
shopping
about this.
center
No,
to
do not
add a
sound
connection to that drive aisle.
Larkin, can you mute him?
Hey, John.
I can't. Lenny.
That's why I got Mike on the other line here. I'm gonna merge him in as well. All right.
Let me see if I can get Lenny to.
I'm not sure we want to hear all that.
Yeah, hey guys, I sent him a chat that he needs to mute his mic.
There you
So
go.
maybe he'll mute it.
Good move.
Okay.
Well,
No.
for his own benefit.
It looks like they're off now. I apologize for that.
I'd point out the Culvers is nowhere near town.
Yeah.
Yes, I was thinking that too. That is not in town.
I apologize. I lost my spot. A landscape plan, photometric plan have not yet been submitted and will be required. The tree survey has been submitted, but there was no overlay. Tree preservation, possible tree protection plan required. Submitted and will be required. Showing 39 parking spaces has been submitted, but there was no overlay. Tree preservation, possible tree protection plan required. Submitted and will be required. Showing 39 parking spaces has been submitted, but technical difficulties. The minimum parking is 19 spaces, so they're technically one parking space over the 200% maximum, so they would have to provide one pervious parking space or eliminate. The dumpster detail is required and is to be constructed in materials to match the building. Landscaped island spacing may not meet the required tree overlay requirement and will need to be restudied with the submittal of the landscape plan. And to get to the architecture, the building is mostly brick with cement board siding accents. The ground floor facade does not meet the 65% transparency requirement, but this can be approved by the DRB. And I know that the applicant can actually provide criteria as to why they're not meeting that requirement. So I will turn that over to the applicant now.
Thank you very much. This is John Powell. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. Let me, first of all, thank you very much. The staff has been very helpful in understanding the guidelines and regulations and sort of walking us through this process. So it's been very helpful and we do appreciate it. What you're looking at is a site plan that is preliminary. I actually received an updated site plan from our civil engineer, I think earlier today. And so we actually have in hand some of these requirements, but let me address them in terms of the order that were presented in terms of the recommendations. I may tell you that we've already done that, but obviously you don't have it in front of you, so I apologize. But we are certainly working to meet all of these requirements and criteria. I'll try to explain the project as I go through these. I think I don't want to waste your time in talking over things that you probably already know, but if you have questions, please feel free to stop me. First of all, the relocation of the driveway, we have been in touch with DOT and they've given us preliminary approval to move the drive down to where we have it located now. So we don't see any problems with moving that or the catch basin. Yes.
John, can I make a suggestion? Yes. This is Chris Campo. Before you kind of get into the bullet point, item by item, I think it would be good to know just big picture, what your intention is, your design intent, the fact, what kind of office building you're making, the feel you're going for, because this is the first time we're seeing it. So it's really, I think if you took an approach of kind of a big picture approach first and then dropped into the details, it would get me up to speed a little bit more quickly.
Okay.
If I could
Well, I'd be
suggest
glad
that.
Certainly, absolutely. I'm glad to do it. So this is located on Midland Parkway. It's replacing a building that is currently a car wash. And the car wash is actually located on one of two adjoining parcels. The adjoining parcel is from this site plan, sort of where the parking entrance is located in the new pond. The new building, thank you. So it's a double lot, and that steel frame car wash is the building that's being torn down to be replaced. This is, from a position standpoint, the Publix located there by Midland Parkway is sort of behind this building, if that gives you a sense of orientation. And so there's a drive entry, a side drive entry to the Publix parking lot to the left of these two parcels, just to give you a sense of orientation. It is fairly wooded, as can be seen. We do have that survey, and we do now have a tree overlay, but obviously it's not in your hands, and so the arborist has not been able to look at the trees that are being anticipated to be removed at this point. To give you the lay of the land in terms of the site layout, we have worked to place the building facing Midland Parkway with the drive aisle to the right. Right now, this illustration shows 39 parking spaces. We have reduced that somewhat. That's one of the requirements. But we've intentionally created a front facade facing Midland Parkway and then another facade very similar to it facing the parking lot, so that as people arrive, they're not going into the back of the building, though it still faces visually Midland Parkway. The easiest way to explain the building aesthetically is probably with the renderings, and I'm not sure where that is in the sequence of these slides. These are all the drawings. You can see the architectural elements of it. This is an optometry office, and so if you've been to the optometrist, you know they don't have a lot of windows. Natural light is something of a challenge for them, and that's one reason for the lack of windows in the design currently is simply they don't function well for an optometry office. But if you can get to the renderings, that's probably the easiest thing. Are they not last in this set?
You know what? Let me see if I can get them. I know you had sent them over. We can take a look at these elevations initially here if you want to address those.
Sure, glad to. So the bottom elevation is actually the elevation facing Midland Parkway. And so you have a visual entrance on the right-hand side. That's going to be a retail portion of the building where glasses will be on sale, and the check-in, check-out counters will be located for the optometry office. The midsection of the building is really where the exam spaces are, which is why those windows are in the elevation. They look dark. Those are actually Bermuda shutters that we're using to sort of cover spaces that have the sort of a simulation of windows. And then the far left end, in terms of that lower elevation, is some of the administration offices. And so we located administration office on the left where the building will be seen from that Publix driveway entrance. So we're trying to put the exam rooms kind of in the midsection where windows aren't ideal for the user, and screen them using the spaces that we really can put glass on. This building would be seen from all four sides, most prominently Midland Parkway, of course, but also from the parking lot and the Publix drive entrance. The upper elevation is the one facing the parking lot, so that entrance door on the left would be the main entrance. The door you can locate just right at the mouse cursor would be the staff entrance, and a break room there on the corner. If you scroll down and don't have the renderings, the next page is the elevations for the left and right side. So the upper elevation is the side facing that Publix drive entry, and those are mostly offices and a break room and a conference room. The elevation on the bottom of the page is the portion where the retail sales are located, and that's the elevation you would see as you drive onto the site to the parking area. Renderings would help. I wish they were available to you.
If you give me a second, I can actually get those up.
Okay. And if you can't, I may be able to share my screen as well.
So just bear
Tim, I have them up if you want me to share my screen.
If you can, I have them open, or I would have to wait for them to open. So go ahead and share them if you can.
Okay, let me.
I don't really want to spend $40.
Let's see if this works. Can y'all see that?
Fantastic.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just tell me if you want me to switch to the other one, John.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So obviously, we're trying to achieve that Somerville, South Carolina low country aesthetic, providing deeper overhangs, a hardy siding, which would be in that board and batten aesthetic. In the previous elevations, we did have brick on the left-hand side. It felt weighty as we were doing the renderings. It seemed to tip the weight towards that side rather than the primary entrance, even though it's larger, just because of the colors and the texture of the brick. And so we actually reduced the brick somewhat. I'd love your input on that. But that left-hand elevation is the one that would face the public's entrance drive. And then, as you can probably tell, most of the elevation you're seeing in light is facing Midland Parkway. The next elevation just walks its way around counterclockwise. So that's the main entrance as seen from Midland Parkway with the Bermuda shutters covering what would be fake windows. In fact, what we'd like to do is actually a herringbone brick set in a recess of a darker color within those alcoves rather than windows, simply not to be faking it quite as much. But obviously the Bermuda shutters to simulate the look of a transparency and an ability to engage with the building there. If you keep working your way around the next rendering, I think furthers that rotation around. This would be the parking lot entrance area. The next rendering is from the parking lot itself, and the front and back are very similar in terms of style and design. You can see how that works out. And then I believe there may be two more renderings, one further around in that parking lot, and then one more from overhead, just to give you a sense of how the roof lines work together and the dormers fit within that standing seam roofing. So that's the big picture. Thank you for cueing me to give you a little more background. And if you'd like me to kind of walk through some of the staff comments, that's great. Or if you'd like to have a conversation about the architecture or site design, I'm happy to do that as well.
I appreciate that, John. I think it's actually more, I think most of the comments, you can just work through staff directly with that. Tim, correct me if I'm wrong. And we can come back to that. I think it'd be better approach to just start talking through it architecturally and site planning. So, Candy, can I call on you first? And then I'll just kind of go down the list.
Chris.
Candy, you still there? Yeah, gotcha.
I am here, and I have to recuse myself from this. I didn't realize it until I just looked at what I was looking at, so.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
No problem. All righty. Bill?
Okay, one comment on the site, on the eastern property line. It may be a portion of the north property line. The difference in zoning between the residential over there and this commercial here, I think you're gonna be astounded at the size buffer you're gonna have. And I don't think this meets it, because I looked at that property one time before for a dentist office or something, and it was god awful amount of buffer requirement there on the east side of that residential neighborhood. But you need to look into that so you don't get any nasty surprises. And then the rendering is totally different than the elevations on the drawings. Drawings are all brick, and the rendering looks like, I don't know, what is it, a tan brick? Or light colored brick?
Yeah. Yes, it's intended to be actually a painted brick.
Painted brick. Well, I
I
would be in favor of a red brick, you know, a normal Somerville color brick, not painted, not tan. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Chris Carpus?
Okay. I'm looking at, well, we're all looking at the same thing here. In the rendering, first off, I think for the most part, this looks great. I don't really have any problems with it. I was having trouble identifying what for sure was the material between the two kind of end elements, but you cleared that up for me. I think like Bill said, maybe a different color brick. Typically, we don't go the painted brick route in Somerville unless it's an old building that we can't do anything about. But I also the headers over the windows being the lighter color matching the field seems a little distracting to me.
I totally agree. I apologize for that. That was a rendering glitch.
Okay.
Architects aren't supposed to confess to that, but that's what happened there.
Been there. Okay. Well, I don't really have a whole lot else to say. I like the board and batten and brick combination. What you have up in the gables, are those louvers? They look solid in the rendering.
Yeah, they'll be louvers, aluminum extruded, that darker finish.
Okay. I don't have a whole lot else to say. I think it's pretty attractive.
Thank you.
All right. Hart Weatherford.
I don't have really any comments. This is still just conceptual. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, I'm okay for conceptual.
Okay. I only have a couple minor comments just to add. Well, first of all, I think the massing's great. I think your approach is very good. So I commend you for that. There's some details and stuff that were mentioned earlier that I would agree with. Now, one thing on the site that I'm looking at is, and you can address this with staff later, really, is the building on the site plan is in a 12-foot power easement. And I believe it's overhead power along Midland Parkway. So you need to be careful there. So that's going to push your building back into the parking lot a little bit. And then with staff, the question is, what kind of buffer planting is allowed in that easement? And again, I think you can just work that out with staff. And then the same that goes for the water easement in the back. It seems like that's a big ditch. It may not be, now that I think about it, it's a water easement. But so just minor site things that you need to consider as you move forward. But overall, as a concept, I'm supportive of it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. John, do you have any other questions or need guidance on anything else?
I think the main one is the question of whether those Bermuda shutters achieve that semblance of transparency that is intended to be true transparency. Obviously, I mentioned before the optometry office, they don't want windows, and we've tried to kind of tuck those into the midsection where they wouldn't be quite as noticeable. But if we could have sort of just a general feeling from the board as to whether this is an acceptable alternative, I'd appreciate having that knowledge.
I think that from what I've heard, the board disagrees. What are your thoughts?
I think their use of the shutters is appropriate. Lord knows I've been at enough optometrists, and it's true that you just don't want a whole lot of windows, and so I think that certainly works well there. I don't know that there's nothing fake about it. I mean, they're real louvers, and whatever you put behind it's real, and it's a good application. So it makes sense to me.
Alrighty. Well, if there's nothing else to add, I think we are good to go.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate your input.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Alrighty, the next item, and this was just conceptual, so there's no vote. The next item up is Magnolia Street. And Tim, if you would get us started, please.
Yes. All right. Getting there. Give me a second. The next item on the agenda, again, is a conceptual review of a proposed 5,600 square foot office building to be developed at the corner of North Magnolia and First Street. Staff comments include, and I think they've addressed this. I apologize. We got an updated site plan that actually moved the detention out of the critical root zone of the 48-inch oak, which they are preserving. We did recommend them contacting DOT about angled parking on North Magnolia Street. We did request a pedestrian connection made into the site from the public right-of-way. And sidewalks along the right-of-ways are technically required per the UDO section 5.3.1 and 5.3.2, but staff does have the ability to waive that requirement in certain circumstances. This requirement will be considered as more detailed plans are completed based on the existing conditions. Obviously, being conceptual review, landscape plan, signage plan, photometric plan have not yet been submitted, and just to revisit, the ground floor does not meet the 65% transparency requirement of section 4.2.9A. And the building does provide a mixture of exterior finishes, including vertical shiplap siding and brick. So at this point, I can hand this over to the applicant, and they can address their design and plans for the site.
Certainly, thank you. This is David Thompson. I'm the architect for the project. We also have Ginny Pulius from my office and Cameron Baker, the civil. I'll give you a general overview and then let Cameron address site, and then I can go through the building specifics. It's basically one-story spec office design for 3 future to be determined tenants. Proportions are driven an awful lot by the minimum 20-foot height restrictions. So what we're doing is proposing a building here that anchors the corner and that starts to mitigate the commercial use to a more residential context, which will lead us into conversation about materials and windows. So that's the general context of the project, and I'll let Cameron run through the site.
Sure. Thanks, David. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. So we've gone through TRC. We've incorporated some of the preliminary feedback we got at that process, which Tim indicated. We've provided some sidewalks, pedestrian access at the right of way. We have shifted the required underground detention outside of the tree protection zone indicated on the plan. We also went in front of the tree protection board last week, and we had one 16-inch cedar, which qualifies as a grand tree, that was approved for removal. And at that meeting too, we talked about the encroachments of the parking into the drip line. Most of that will be at or near grade. There will be work around there, but we'll incorporate the feedback from the tree protection board to provide some sort of pervious paver system, specifically for the spaces inside those root zones. But we'll obviously try to make it a little more consistent than that. Generally speaking, access is off East First North. The building fronts Magnolia Street. Since we're discharging to the DOT right away, we've got the underground detention. And the trees are a great asset to the site. So we want to try to do everything we can to maintain those 2 nice oaks out there. Outside of that, I'll be happy to answer any questions as they arise.
Great. Thank you. If someone could scroll down to the architectural floor plan. All right, I'll start there. So we got street side and parking lot side. The street side punctuated with more articulated recessed entrances for each of the 3 tenant spaces, with the primary tenant space being the larger one at the corner. Because of the way the building wraps the corner, we have chosen to break up the massing, and where we break the massing, we're also breaking the material usage. But we're doing that with the logic driven by that change occurs where the tenant space changes. So it's not an arbitrary sort of trying to make a bigger building look like several smaller buildings. So we do have a step back in the building plane. I think it's about 18 inches. We'll get that dimension for you. We've got adequate depth recess as well as a projection on the entrances so that you get a much deeper entrance to the two smaller units. So they have a different character than the larger unit. So you get closer to 5 feet on those. Rear entrances off of the parking lot have awnings. We also have awnings proposed for side elevation over windows. Those will be detailed out for future submittals, but the idea is that they will be steel and wood. We've also gone ahead and started to indicate locations for downspouts, and we are anticipating what effect those will have on the building. Or we can scroll down from the floor plan. Roof plan, pretty straightforward. We are proposing a parapet with a low slope monoslope roof towards the rear. You can see the location of our awnings as well. Next page. So the big idea of the building here is that, to me, the site felt more residential than it does commercial as the neighborhood sits today. Obviously, it is a commercial zoning, it's a commercial use. We don't want to make a building that looks like a big house, but I also want to be respectful to the context. So we've wanted to soften this a little bit, not go too crazy contemporary. The shorter right-hand piece that has the 2 units in it, we've really looked back at other Somerville buildings with, you got a great tradition of brick detailing. So we're looking forward to some opportunities for water table detailing, some expression around the window openings, parapet detailing. And then the corner piece, which is taller, is where we're pushing a little bit more contemporary and introducing a vertical wood siding. It's also where we've punctuated sort of an oversized, more civic scaled entrance to that particular tenant, which we're using Corten steel panels. We have carried that gray washed wood to the right-hand brick portion of the building so that it's not just a one-off usage, and we've tied the 2 pallets together. We'll be using black aluminum storefront for all of the windows. One thing I would love to know more about when we get to your conversation is whether we're interpreting the minimum 20-foot height limit correctly, which we've applied to the lower of the 2 building sections. Next page. Two-dimensional representations of all 4 elevations are on 201 and 202 with materials keyed. I think it starts to give you an idea of how we want to really focus detail exploration on the entrances and the windows and the awnings, and then let the building be very simply executed with just good, straightforward, honest details. Next page, and that may be all. So this would be street elevation on the top and adjacent neighbor elevation to the left, where you've got the brick in the foreground, and then you're seeing through the parking lot to the tenant entrance in the background on the right hand. Maybe one more sheet. I don't remember if we put sections in here. Oh, site photos. So this really, if you can understand my feeling about wanting to mitigate between commercial use and commercial zoning and a more residential palette, this is where that comes from. Love to answer any questions you guys have. We appreciate the opportunity.
All righty. Thank you so much, David. This is Chris Campo. Can you tell me what the arborist said about the condition of the oak tree? Was
both.
it, do you recall?
Yeah, both. I mean, both the
Go ahead.
48 and 30. This is Cameron Baker. Both the 48 and 38 are in good shape, relatively good shape. So, and we looked at
Okay.
just as some background. We looked at alternative site layouts. Generally, the drainage for this property drains from plan south to plan north, so from the adjacent property towards east first. So orientating the building towards east first, really creates a challenge from a drainage and stormwater perspective. And also, there still would be impacts to those root zones. So this is the layout that we felt, kind of honored natural drainage patterns, and also as best we could provided the protection to those tree protection zones without asking for removal.
And let me go ahead and address some site comments since I have you. Did you explore, instead of having dead end parking, have it, oh gosh, that's a house next to you, isn't it?
It's actually it's a house. It's a converted, I believe it's probably that administrative office for the church next door.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking that was street there, but my concern is the dead end parking, particularly if the cars in the lower 9 parking spaces, if that parking lot is full, you have to back out on a curve on the road, or try to catch a parking space you may have missed. I think that's very challenging. And I think the tree is, you're only 10 foot off of the tree with the road. I think it infringes too much for me. I like to see you have less parking on here, like that number 4 has gone, and one to the north of the tree. And actually, I would prefer the drive aisle to be smaller. To me, a parking lot on this site just doesn't quite work. And that's very, very challenging to get around that. I understand that. But that's just my initial reaction. Is it just seems like, oh my gosh, historically, all these properties had minimal on-site parking, and most of their parking was on the street. I don't know if staff has can comment on that, on how, does the UDO allow it? Can you still have, you're still going to have de facto on-street parking because that's where people are going to park, unless DOT comes in and changes anything. So,
Chris, to address that, the UDO does allow for on-street parking. Actually, this property is zoned DMX, if I remember correctly. Yeah, downtown mixed use, which technically they don't need to provide any parking on site. Obviously, that's inconsistent with most developers and VCs. That they'd like to have some on-site parking to meet their needs for their customers. But they can take into account all of the parking within, I believe it's 600 feet of the property to count towards their parking requirements. So whatever they would need to meet that requirement for the size square footage of this office, they can go out onto Magnolia, onto First Street, and potentially meet their parking needs while not at the same time not providing as much parking on site.
Understood. Just a reminder, this is conceptual review, so this can kind of just be a discussion, but those are my initial thoughts. I think I'll talk about building a little bit later, but does anyone else have any comments on site? How about start with you, Hart Weatherford? Hart, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. looks to me like, looking at the plan here, does the building not encroach into the landscape buffer on the, I guess that would be the south property line?
The
Because
8-foot
the zoning
perimeter
is the same, I believe it's 5 feet for that buffer there.
that was a parking, that 8-foot, that was an 8-foot parking buffer provided. So we've maintained it for the parking areas.
Okay, yeah,
So that's just for the, it's not a,
all of the lettering there. But it's not a landscaping buffer, it's a parking landscape. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there was an 8-foot perimeter landscape area shown just on the sides, but that's for the parking areas as 8-foot buffer for parking areas between adjacent properties.
well, you're not hitting that then where the dead end parking is, correct? Where you've got the number 24?
Yeah, we are. So we can look at shifting that back, I guess. And that was provided for as part of the UDO, looking for connectivity, future connectivity to adjacent parcels. So should the adjacent parcel ever get redeveloped?
Let me interject one along those same lines. If your building end wall of your building is less than 10 feet from the property line, then you're going to be into a 2-hour firewall. So if you don't mind paying the extra money for a 2-hour firewall, you can keep it closed, but nevertheless, usually you want to be 10 feet from the property line.
And as I interpret, there's also a 5-foot maximum size setback on that for building.
Say again?
Does the UDO, and maybe Tim could clarify, is 5-foot maximum side setback? So if we have building in that area, it's got to be within. Is that
Your side setback can't be within 5 feet of the property line.
Second.
Yeah, there in DMX, there's actually 0 side
0 to 5
requirement. It's a
Well,
5-foot maximum.
5-foot maximum. So in other words, you dictate then that they do have a firewall there.
Correct.
Essentially, yes.
And windows would have to be fire rated.
Whatever building code requires, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy.
So, Jesse, instead of bringing the building that close, could they not take a driveway along that southern side? If they had to?
They could, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the frontage build out doesn't count driveways, drive aisles, so they could.
Okay.
And just throwing it out there, this is Rebecca from the building department. They're allowed to have 25% openings not fire rated that close. That would be fine.
Is this a fire district?
Bill, did you have?
Is this in a fire district?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, like downtown Somerville is in a fire district, so all your restrictions are much more restrictive when it comes to proximity to your property lines and openings and everything else. It overrides building code when you're in the fire district.
I'm not aware of any fire districts. I'm sorry.
Well, corner of Cedar Street and Doty, that's part of the fire district, as well as the rest of downtown Somerville in that area. So the buildings we've built there, we had to be very particular about openings and distances and that sort of thing to meet the requirements of the fire district. You'll have to look it up. Anyway.
I'm not sure where I would find that, Bill.
Yeah, I think you brought this up previously, but I'm unaware of it and its exact location. So
Ben can tell you all about the fire districts.
Well, Ben did review this and he didn't mention anything about a fire district, so.
Well, it may not be in the fire district. It's on the other side of the track.
That's what I'm saying. He is involved in the TRC, so hopefully he would have mentioned it if it's in a fire district.
Okay.
Alrighty. Hart, or Harder, Bill, did you have anything else to add, site-wise?
No, that's all I've got as far as any comments on the whole thing.
Okay. Mr. Carpus?
Hey, David.
Hey, Chris.
Good to hear you. I don't really have any comments on the site. And Bill, I think the primary thing with exterior windows is whether or not it's sprinkled or non-sprinkled and how close it is to the property line combined. But as far as the building, Tim, can you scroll back to the elevation or the rendering? There we go. I really appreciate the fact that you're trying to balance this commercial residential, because it's right there in the mix of both. And I think what you're saying is that by using the materials that you're using, you're trying to connect a little more with the residential, but the overall with parapets and canopies kind of relating more to the commercial, right?
That's right. And it also really influenced the proportions and size of the windows as well. So why we have the more ganged multi-mutton storefronts more towards the corner, and then to the single punched openings that are, they're still massive windows. And that said, we didn't hit the percentage requirement, but yes, the balance of materials, window size, window proportion is attempting to mediate back to the neighborhood.
So how does your application of the UDO kind of affect what you've got? Because I think that it talks a little bit about buildings having a base and a kind of a middle area, field area, and a cap.
I think we've certainly achieved that with the brick portion of it. Part of the development of the wood portion to the left is going to evolve as we address grades, which have been finalized now and were developed post-submittal. So there is some fall back to the corner of the building, which is going to start to affect detailing of how that wood stops. So to address building base, I think that's something that we can start to look at the same time we're looking at how this building touched the ground with grades not being flat.
Gotcha. Well, my first take on it would be that it seems to lean more towards the commercial than the residential, just because of the volumes, the massing, and it would be, to me, it would be like a perfect building to have on like upper meeting, as it's kind of transitions a little bit from commercial to residential, and there's a lot of application there, I think, for more modern design. It may not fit very well at this location, because when Somerville looks at residential, I think we're looking for more like pitch roofs and siding and that kind of thing. So it may be that it, while cool, it just is a little too contemporary for that location. Kind of where I'm coming from.
Alrighty, thank you for those comments. Candy, did you have anything you'd like to add to site or architecture?
Chris, I really don't have any comments on the site. I think they were trying to just make the parking work and have some off-street parking and not have it be so stringent. The architecture is a challenge for that location. So that would be my comments at this time.
Alrighty. David, I appreciate the effort. I understand the logic of where you're coming from. And Tim, if you could scroll down to the pictures, I think we all are pretty familiar with this area, and this part of town is pretty unique in my opinion, because this was once a predominantly residential area. And, at some point, the development across the street came in, which is, I think, in the middle bottom, that was recently renovated. And I think you may have kind of picked up on some cues from that building. And then at some point, the post office was put in, which is a god-awful building, if I'm being honest. Very plain, stucco. I haven't heard a lot of support ever in the community about that building. So while I appreciate the effort, I think the design approach for this building is not appropriate. I think it needs to really pay respect to the former use, the current use, and that it has some residential cues in nature. I don't think you need, residential cues. I don't think you need to make it look like a house necessarily, but I think it needs to look like it was based on Somerville residential principles. A porch, a angled roof, maybe even a shed roof, something like that. And you look at the building across the street, which is the yellow building. I think what you propose is going to look starkly different. And I know the UDO may have kind of led you down that road, but I think the blocks between Main Street and whatever the rear street is, that corridor needs to look residential in nature. And it can be kind of this modern approach with bricks and metal and stuff like that. But I think the forms and massing need to be more historically residential that you found in this area, because this area was populated by a lot of mostly little old houses. And I think if we start to take these houses out one at a time, that we really are not, we're forgetting the context that this was built in. So I don't want to get all philosophical about it, but, I guess, I don't know if I'm clear or just rambling, but that's kind of my, objection to this project architecturally.
So just to be clear, so I've got direction moving forward. It really does sound like the commercial guidelines for this building are sort of being trumped by site context, and that we are talking about a very literally residential looking structure, especially being encouraged to look at a pitched roof. It sounds.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I think that
Chris.
this building is about a block further than it should be. Go ahead, Bill.
Let me make two comments. Is it Rebecca that didn't know about the fire districts? I think. But anyway, if she refers to the IBC, 2018 IBC, looks at Appendix D, that is fire districts. Appendix D of the building code, IBC is fire districts. Tells you all about them. And, the UDO kind of forces us, the intent of the UDO is to turn this area from looking residential to looking urban. And I don't have an objection to that. I don't think it needs to go down the road of looking like residential. I think it ought to go to let the trend be urban. That's just my opinion.
Well, I don't think we need to go like, Park's funeral home, but maybe a combination of some pitched roofs and parapets. I don't know. David's an excellent architect. He knows what we're talking about. So.
Yeah, and I think, David, you're at a little bit of a disadvantage because this is, to my recollection, the first project that's kind of going in this area, existing residential, that's kind of trying to comply with the UDO. So I think I get it. So, and I think you can get there as well.
A pre-application meeting, that would have been really helpful.
Yeah. And maybe that's something we need to think about in our process moving forward. So, and my last little comment is, I still have concerns about the proximity to the tree. So, David, do you need any other guidance, or do you need any other comments?
Nope, I think that's pretty clear.
Okay. All right. Does the board have anything else they would like to add? Okay, this is just conceptual, so thank you so much for your time, and appreciate you hearing us out. And we will move on to the next application, which is 114 Farm Road. Tim.
All right. Next item is Farm Road. And this is a conceptual review of a proposed 7,500 square foot multi-tenant office building. Excuse me. There is existing development on this site. This would be in addition to the existing buildings that are already on the site. There are 3 buildings on the site and a cell tower. The intent would be to add it here in I guess you could say the front lawn area. The zoning of the property is GB, general business. The staff comments are as follows. If the building square footage is 25% or more of the overall square footage on the site, the entire site's landscaping will need to be brought up to current standards. Based on staff calculations, there are 11,258 square feet of existing building. The proposed 7,500 square feet would exceed that 25% threshold. So the landscape plan that is in the submittal actually needs to be restudied and brought up to code for the site. Staff will work with them on what can feasibly be done. ADA parking and loading zones and the sidewalk in front of the building would need to confirm where they're being located. Tree removal permit will be needed if any trees are being removed from the site. Dumpster locations. And then, as far as architecture goes, it's a pretty straightforward metal building. And then as far as the access drive goes, the 20-foot wide drive needs to be throated to ensure fire truck access. But to address the site, we can turn that over to Gene Brislin, who is still on. Excellent. And address the site and other issues.
Yeah, 2.5 hours. It's killing me. No, I'm glad to get a chance to present this. To give you kind of the 10,000 foot view. I didn't see in the packet, I provided a bunch of photos. I mean, the whole, I wanted to get it in front of the board. Yeah, there they are, right? I wanted to get it in front of the board to see this because we got kind of an unusual situation. Could you go back up to the drawing, Tim? Thanks. We'll come back down to the pictures, but go back up to the survey. Yeah. So originally, the owner had this site, and it was in the county, and he constructed the 3 buildings. The 2 buildings on the north side are masonry with metal roof. The one in the south east, plan-wise, is another pre-engineered metal building. He needed to get to city water and sewer, and so he petitioned to get into the town and was zoned as business. In the changeover to the UDO, this site is a general business site. Of course, if you look at the UDO, as you well know, that applies mostly out North Main 17. And so, so it's an unusual zoning for this particular area. To the east is the county. It's Mr. Jung's property there on Baconsbridge Road. The town property is one to, I guess, the north. This farm road was originally tied into Baconsbridge. but during the widening process, it was made a private road now. There's no access to Bacon's Bridge anymore. That's where the daycare was at the red light, and that's all was reconfigured. So the road is private. So there's really no road frontage for a general business zoning. So in talking to the client, we kind of said, well, we're going to make the entrance there. And I met with Tim and talked to him about this too. I mean, we tried to do some preliminary work, is to say, okay, we're going to consider that our frontage. And so we put the building right on that little entryway, which you can go down to the site plan, please, Tim. Yeah. So we pretended that that was our road front, and so we put it up as close to that. It has a sidewalk and the parking spaces with some landscaping. Now, we did go to the TRC on Tuesday before I posted these on Friday, and we've done a lot of work based on their comments. One thing that's not on the landscape plan is that existing structure, again, to the southeast was built after those, the other masonry ones, and there's a significant number of landscaping that was done around that building. Of course, I didn't show that. This was just the new landscaping that I applied. So we can work with staff with there. There's a significantly more greater amount of landscaping on that site than is shown. I was just putting in some landscaping to try to work. And again, we tried to create a buffer over there, you know, on Farm Road. Again, that's a private road. There was a comment, and there is a drainage easement there. So we've got to kind of work with that a little bit. It may result in us sliding the building, 10 feet or so to the north. I don't know yet. We're just going to kind of see where that goes. The cell tower, the owner renegotiated or had, if you could go back up to the survey, Tim. You can see where the easement has changed. It was originally further south, and he renegotiated that and pulled it. So the hatched area is the new easement. There's been a new culvert and a new entrance created onto the Farm Road, private road. The other entrance is there, but it'll be abandoned. Okay, go down to the architecture. Let's go down to the photos, please. Let's look at those first. So, so the architectural, Tim, did you get my chat?
Truthfully, I don't think so.
Jesse, did you get a chat? Well, the architecture, the architecture has changed. That's why. So I had sent you, Tim emailed you a plan, which I uploaded to the site, I think last week, but I'm not sure it got in here either. I sent you the wrong one. So, but the owner originally wanted us to do what the architecture that you see, but he, during the process, decided that he wanted to match the existing buildings. And so the architecture, I will explain the difference if Tim can't pull up that other drawing, but the overhangs and the windows and doors that you see on these photos is what we actually want to use on the building. So the design intent is to make this building, except for the canopy, over the canopies, which will be different than that entrance canopy. And that's because we don't have the garage doors on the front, we have the garage doors on the back. So we did a different, Tom came up with a different canopy scheme. If you can go up to the architecture.
Just a second.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm driving you.
Changes.
I'm sorry I'm driving you all around, Tim, but I can talk a little bit while you're pulling up the changes. So to break up the front, Tom came up with using the board and batten wainscot around the front, so that it wasn't just the flat metal siding. The canopies are the same, and the main entrance door is the same, The difference is that there are the rectangular windows like we saw in the other building. And so it's a be metal roof and metal siding. But we wanted to get it to get some feedback from the board. We haven't done photometrics or color renderings or anything yet until we wanted to get some feedback, mainly because of this kind of zoning issue and our design intent or the owner's intent to match or at least get close to what he has with his other building. So that's the 10,000 foot view.
Alrighty.
And if Tim can pull up that, we'll let maybe you guys can talk about cider stuff until he can pull that up.
Yeah, I would not be able to do that.
Okay.
I've got it up. You should see it now. Do you see it?
No.
I mean, that looks exactly like what I had before.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Then I think you must have uploaded the wrong one, Gene.
Okay. Tim, I sent you an email.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is the one that said revised, and it was the one that was uploaded.
Yeah, I must have grabbed the wrong one.
Okay. Then I'm gonna stop sharing.
Thank you.
Bear with me a moment. Let me see if I can find it.
It should have just came in. I mean, when we started this meeting, I saw it wasn't in the packet and I ran upstairs and emailed it to you.
Yeah, I got the email. Let's see if I can open it up.
If not, forward it to Jesse.
Come on.
While he's looking for that, what is the updated plan? Is it a site plan, landscape plan, architecture?
Architecture. Yeah, architecture. Tom revised the windows, right? So the only thing that's really changed architecturally is that instead of that glass storefront with the side windows and the door, it's a single door and single windows, much like the photo of the building across the street.
Well, while he's looking at that, does someone feel comfortable talking about this from a site plan standpoint or anything else?
I have what was sent over by Gene here this afternoon, shared up on your screen.
And asking for conceptual review.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry, Tim. Somehow I shrunk the Zoom window on my computer. But yeah, that's
half the meeting. So don't
yeah,
worry.
yeah. I understand. All right. So yeah, there you go. That's the revised windows. Again, the design intent is to our owner wanted to be similar to the building across what we're calling a street, but it's really just the gravel parking lot.
All right. Well, since we have the building up, let's just talk about that. Tim, is there a back? What side is facing Farm Road?
The left side. So no, that side right there. What says the side elevation.
And this is a dead end road, and you cannot effectively see it from Bacon's Bridge Road, correct?
That's correct. You can't see anything, any of this building at all. The Jung property with the buildings there. And if we put the buffer in as we planted along Farm Road, even as you've turned down going to Newington Plantation or going back to Marlin Estate, you won't see it at all.
Okay. Bill, do you have any comments or questions? Bill Boshane?
Okay, no, not really. I guess there's not gonna be any paving. It's all gonna be gravel parking lot.
Yes, the only thing that's going to be concrete is the handicap and the sidewalk.
On the end of the building and the
That's
sidewalk.
correct.
Okay.
And the sidewalk in the front. That's correct.
That's about it. No more
Alrighty.
questions.
Art Weatherford, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I just have one comment, Gene. With the addition of this building and the sidewalk, is there any requirement for any sort of detention, or is this kind of considered existing and there's no detention requirement?
Yeah, there's no detention requirement. We're not gonna be anywhere close to 23,000 square feet.
I'm good then.
Okay. Ms. Candy Pratt, do you have any comments or questions? Candy?
I'm fine with what's been presented, Chris.
Okay, thank you. Keep in mind this is just conceptual. Mr.
Fine.
Carpus, do you have any comments or questions? Mr. Carpus?
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Hi, not too much. I'm wondering if, Tim, you could show us the existing buildings one more time, the pictures?
Give me a second.
Okay.
Are you seeing that?
No, unless that is what we're just looking at.
Okay, hold on. Had to change what I'm sharing.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. I really, this kind of, I've been there, not there, but architecturally similar situation. The only thing that I would say is consider making the base, the wainscot a little solid instead of having vertical stuff, a lot of vertical elements. Because you got plenty of vertical stuff going on with the metal. Maybe something a little more solid looking, but as a wainscot. But again, it's not like that's in the for what it's worth department. So that's all I got.
Alrighty, I think, considering it's at a dead end street and it's going to be buffered, extensively, really the only comment I have, or two, I suppose, is not, historically the board doesn't like to see palm trees.
Well, those are just representative. We're not going to have palm trees on there. That was just Tom putting some trees on there.
Yeah. And then second would be, and you may have it, I'm just not seeing it, recommend canopies over any doors, particularly in the, I don't think that I see that, they may be there again, but in the rear, need to have canopies over the doors.
Yeah,
but
we can do that.
Aside from that, does the board or have any other comments that they would like to relay to the applicant? All right, so that's it. Gene, do you have any comments or questions for us? This is just for conceptual review.
Yeah, no, we've done a lot of work, but I wanted to, before we got too far, I wanted to get some input, and I think I understand that we're going in the right direction, so we'll complete and provide, photometric and rendering and stuff like that so that we can hopefully cross the finish line.
Yeah, just have to work through comments with staff, so.
Yes, yeah, that's
all
fine.
right.
No, yeah,
Thank
all
you.
those
Thank you
TRC
so much.
comments. Okay.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank
Tim,
you.
do you have anything else for us?
There is nothing under miscellaneous. We can move on to a vote for adjournment.
All right, who would like to make a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion to adjourn.
That was Bill.
Second.
Who had a second?
Second.
Was Candy. All vote by signing off.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Aye.
Bye.
Night,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
No, not yet.